Hey, what's up, strangers on the internet? My name's Kyle, Thrift Boss channel here on YouTube, and I appreciate you hanging out with me for a few today. I've been an online reseller for the past 14 years. It's been my primary source of income for about half of those years. Today's video, I want to talk about transparency in reselling online, and specifically transparency in online reselling here and how it's represented on YouTube, because there's a lot of great information out there, a lot of great content reseller creators on YouTube, and it's really easy to be misled, misinformed, even manipulated in a way. And it's not always a complete picture of what the reselling industry is like. So I wanted to talk about real transparency in this business and how it's represented on YouTube and what we can do about it. So let's hop in. Now, this video isn't about targeting any specific YouTuber or content creator or reseller on YouTube. If that's the case, then I'm certainly including myself in that discussion because I create content. I'm a reseller. I put this stuff online. So if I were to point fingers, I'm also pointing fingers at myself. But that is, again, not the goal of this video. It's more about just talking about as consumers of reselling content, there's a lot to be had about transparency. This discussion about transparency of how we create content and how we consume it, and things to keep in mind both while consuming it and creating it. And just like Instagram, just like Facebook, YouTube can very much feel like a highlight reel of the experience of being an online reseller. It's like a curated reality versus an authentic reality of what the experience is like. And it's like social media. We all know it's the highlights that we all come to see and that we love to share. You know, in regards to online reselling content, it's the stuff that we love to share, the treasures that we find, the best treasures, how much money we've made off finding something out in the wilds. That's the stuff we really want to see and the stuff we really want to share. And what often doesn't make it into the content is the day-to-day struggles, the mundane, the boring stuff, the mistakes that we make, basically the stuff that sucks. We don't really talk about that very much. And I think there's that's where some of the I don't want to use the word manipulation per se, but it can certainly easily be misled or misinformed to what the actual authentic experience of an online reseller is. And why does that matter so much? I've wanted to talk about this for a long time. I've been an online reseller, like I said, for 14 years. I was pretty desperate at the time. I was looking for a way to make more money on the side, and I just like so many folks, I went down the rabbit hole on YouTube, and I found a lot of great side gigs, but the one that kind of excited and inspired me the most was I was watching people going out to thrift stores and garage sales, and some things that actually looked like garbage to me. People were out there and they were flipping it on eBay or Amazon, and they were actually making money. And so I was hooked. I had to try it, and I did. And I found that it actually could work, and that I actually loved it. And I imagine that there's a lot of folks out there similar to myself who gave it a shot and started very simply and grew the business over time. But something I noticed then, and I still notice it today. And again, it's not about targeting any person, because again, I would be talking about myself here, but it's the thumbnails, it's the title of the videos, it's the content itself, which when we highlight things that say like, I made $3,445 in 2 hours at this Goodwill, or I sold this item for $400. And oftentimes there's a lot of room for some misinformation in there. And I wanted, that's kind of what this video is about, because what we don't know as consumers for information. And again, a lot of you people who are seasoned resellers, you people, a lot of folks out there like myself, fellow resellers who have been doing this for a while. Some of this information, you know, it's going to be like no duh to you, but I'm talking to the beginner me from 14 years ago. And loosely throwing around these numbers, as we all do, it can certainly leave some room for some misinterpretation. And again, I don't think anybody's out to mislead anyone on purpose. Of course, there are some bad apples out there. This is the internet, after all, but it's more about for those beginner eyes out there, those people who are unaware, who can be kind of misled with some dollar sign eyes. And I know a lot of you out there are like, again, no duh, dummy, and I'm just preaching to the choir out there. But the numbers for those newbies out there, when you see these numbers, keep in mind that there's a lot of context that goes into these numbers. We don't know the cost of the goods. When you see a screenshot of something that's sold, or a number in a fancy large number in a thumbnail. We don't know the cost of those goods. We don't know what that reseller paid for those goods. We don't know the shipping cost. We don't know the seller fees. We can make estimations, of course. We don't know what kind of overhead cost. We don't know all the cost involved. And we don't actually know what the real profits are. And that's something that is really important to realize, because something that sold for $500, a reseller authentically could have paid $300 for or $400 for. It's not like they're necessarily making hundreds of dollars. Of course, those things do happen and they will highlight it, of course. But just keep in mind, there's always context. There's always more information to what we're being sold strictly by looking or listening. For example, something like this. I sold this magazine lot, 37 issues. I bought these for $40 in a thrift store out in, I think it was North Carolina. And it sold for $165 minus all these fees. You can see the fee breakdown here. Overall, according to eBay, after all the fee breakdown, I made $117 and change. eBay doesn't know that I spent $40. In addition to that $40, I also spent taxes, which whatever North Carolina state taxes I paid on top of that $40. So if it was, say, 10%, I actually paid $44. Yet that kind of information, it rarely makes it in. No resellers, we don't often include the tax that we pay. Some resellers do have like tax certificates, of course, that they don't have to pay tax. I'm not one of them. I'm not sure how many people do or don't have that take advantage of that, like no tax paperwork that however it's set up. I don't really know. But anyway, I paid $44 plus what's unaccounted for, the gas that it took to pay, the gas that I paid for that particular trip. I don't know how to calculate that, as it's part of a larger road trip. However, there are costs of going to that station. There's costs for shipping supplies, and then any profits that I do make, which that $117, say, minus, say, $50 overall, that leaves me with about $67 on that $165 sale for that particular item, of which I also have to reinvest into my business to buy more inventory to sell. I also had to pay for gas going to and from the post office. And I also do have an office. Granted, it's in my home, but it does cost me extra money to run this business out of my house. And I also have to pay state and federal taxes on my profits of these items. So there's a lot of costs. There's a never-ending list of costs associated with sales. So just keep that in mind whenever you see numbers online. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting every reseller go out there and we break down every time we sell every item down to the particular penny of listing every cost and doing like a line item. That would be awful for everyone. That'd be awful for us to watch. That would be awful for you to do. Nobody'd make videos like that. So I'm definitely not suggesting that at all. It's more of just to keep a reminder for all of us when we're out there to keep in mind that these numbers, all these things should be added into the context of the mix. And for any newbies out there, I'm talking to myself, again, 14 years ago, that there are more than meets the eye to these Transformer eBay sales. Also, something that can easily be misunderstood is that when something is purchased, it is simply inventory until it is sold. A lot of times, every reseller, all of us, we all buy things with the intentions of selling it. That doesn't mean it actually sells. There's a small percentage of items that for whatever reason don't end up selling. And if we spend $5 on a given thing that doesn't sell, usually that's never brought up in any kind of video. That's never really mentioned again. We always just see while we're watching what something was purchased for and the potential price of an item. And even if it does sell, which again, if I say something, if I flash a screen up that something's going to sell for $45, because that's the information that I saw when I bought this item, that doesn't mean I necessarily sold it for $45, because there are things like promoted sales where I might have to pay a higher percentage than the typical eBay percentage if I run a promoted sale, or if I take a best offer, for example, because I do a lot of best offers. In fact, all my items, I believe, have best offers. And I do take a lot of offers. So that $45 pair of shoes that I meant to hopefully get $45 for, maybe I only got it for $35. So until something sells, it just sits on a shelf and it's just inventory. And there are also some very bad days. You won't really see me talking about all the days that I've gone out where I haven't found anything. Maybe I've spent $20 in gas by going to 2 or 3 different thrift stores, and I spent 2 or 3 hours doing so, and I come home with nothing. Or maybe I come home with 2 or 3 things for like a $7 profit, and it's kind of wondering, did I actually profit when I consider all the costs of everything? That's very possible I actually didn't make anything. And there's also times where I buy things, I make bad buys. We all make bad buys where we make mistakes in some way. Those things don't necessarily make it into the video, and those things all can cost the business, but we don't really see those things. But everybody, again, it's just part of doing business to expect to make mistakes. It's part of the process, and just do your best. That's what makes YouTube content, reselling content so good on YouTube, is that sharing of information when we are going out and we're sharing the treasures that we find out in the wilds. That's the kind of education that I certainly find the most valuable at this point in my, my reselling career, is just seeing I'm constantly learning. That's how I learned. The learning curve for this business is just like anything. It can be pretty steep. And one thing to help lessen that curve is to watch other people and to see what they find and what they share. That's what makes YouTube online reselling content so good, is that we get to learn from each other. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there like myself who at one point or another watched some really fantastic, their favorite reseller YouTubers out there, and saw that they were full-time and were like, how do I make that my reality? How do I turn reselling into a full-time thing for me? And I think something that's important to say is that it's really hard. Reselling is a hard job. It's like all things, it gets easier, I guess, in time. With experience, you can learn how to make it easier. However, it still is pretty hard. Even for those folks, they have different kinds of struggles. As you grow, new kinds of struggles appear, new roadblocks appear. But certainly, when you are starting out, or when you're trying to figure out how to incorporate more reselling into your life, there's going to be so many different kinds of roadblocks. They're going to have a myriad of reasons why things suck. Kind of like what we were saying earlier in the video. It could be location based. Maybe you have a lot of access to good inventory, or maybe you don't have access to thrift stores. Maybe you don't have a lot of capital to start. There's so many different reasons of why this could suck. And not to mention, it takes a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of initiative. It takes resourcefulness. And these are just things, qualities that at the very least that you could have, outside of just the business costs that you have to come up with yourself. Nobody can save you once you decide to go that route. This is all up to you. You have the responsibility of doing things like saving for your retirement, saving for healthcare costs, which can be really expensive, that sometimes, more traditional career or job can offer those kinds of things. But when you're a full-time reseller, those are things you have to accommodate for. And especially when it comes to full-time, one of the biggest hurdles for folks out there is just scaling to the capacity at which to pay their bills. And scaling can be really hard because you only have so many resources. You only have so much time. You only have so much manpower. You only have so much money. There's only so much that you can give of yourself before you either burn out, or you have to do something like hire employees, which then, that adds to the cost of the business. But things like some ways out of it are becoming a private labeler, selling replenishable items. There are some folks out there who probably have at their fingertips availability to thrift stores and inventory at any given time. Of course, those situations do exist. There's a lot of great resellers out there who have years, decades of experience, share a lot of good tips, advice, strategies, things that work for them. And I think it's, again, pretty important for you to go out there and do some trial and error of your own to see what works for you, if it doesn't. But generally speaking, here on YouTube, you will find a lot of the same advice and strategies and tips, including myself. Some of the stuff that I share, a lot of this stuff you will hear, it can become very repetitive, and some of it's very much common sense. It's just the nature of the business, where at its core, it's a very simple in concept. You buy something for low and you sell it for higher, and you hope to make money. And the learning curve is sometimes just the platforms themselves and learning how to navigate the sometimes complicated button pushing on some of these sites, and the hurdles you have to jump through, and just the general experience of selling and I guess the online retail environment. But overall, it's very much an industry that you can learn, and you should learn best by just going out there and getting started. Even this kind of inspirational thing, it's very much part of the regular advice here on reselling content on YouTube. Now, I certainly don't want to be misunderstood myself. I love reselling. Reselling has completely changed my life. And despite all the transparency that, and all the things, the pitfalls, the stuff that should be taken into context while we're watching this, and stuff that kind of sounds like a little discouraging in a way, I do want to kind of end the video by saying how much I love reselling. I'm thankful, I'm grateful that able to make a living doing this. It certainly has changed my life financially, physically. It's given me so much freedom. And I am on the boat of belief that anybody who needs a little cash on the side, that online reselling is a fantastic side gig. And there's so many examples of folks who just give it a shot, who just kind of want to test the waters, who end up also loving it and learning more and want it to make a bigger part of their life, and who have gone on. You'll see a lot of folks, if you go back into earlier in channels, do some deep diving on some of these folks out there that were just part-time and now they're full-time resellers, and they share their experiences on YouTube, or couples where one had like a traditional job, one is a reseller, and the person with the traditional job ends up quitting their job and joining forces to make a Captain Planet reseller team. And it's really cool. And that's something I think all people should just give it a shot. As I've worked for over 50 different companies, and my favorite by far has been working for myself as an online reseller. I've tried so many different traditional jobs and side gigs alike, and nothing has beaten my experience as an online reseller. Anyway, I may have forgotten a thing or two. Maybe I've talked too long in all this. I am an old man, so I get lost in thought sometimes. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Let me know. Are you a reseller? Are you thinking about reseller? Do you love reselling? Do you hate reselling? Did you leave? Every so often in my comment section, I get folks that say they were a reseller and they quit for some reason or other. So I'd love to also hear what kind of struggles you have. And do you like all these questions? That's a good question to think about. So anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you out in the wild.